Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
Hello, regular Drews.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome back to another episode of Regular Nancy Drew. I'm your host. I don't know why I'm started this way.
I like it.
But I'm Becky, and you're Kori.
Yes.
Anyway, today we are here to discuss a mystery story. We're so excited. We have kind of shifted gears from our Hardy Boys section into a mystery stories section, and we are back with none other than the Clue of the Velvet Mask.
Yay!
I'm so excited.
Mm-hmm.
I was just telling you before we started recording, Kori, how refreshing it always is to like pick up a mystery story again. I feel like you forget when you kind of get away from them and you're like reading other things, but you're like, oh, this is good. This is so good. And like, even when the mystery stories are bad, they're still good. You know, it's just
They're
so
just
joyful.
so classic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nostalgic and lovely. And I feel that way about the Velvet Mask.
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
I really like this one. No.
Okay.
It just reminds you all
Yeah.
the things that you love about original Nancy.
Right.
It just brings you back to what's so good about her.
Yeah. So I actually read, the only version I have of this is the original text version. So I read the original text version. So this is a Mildred Wirt Benson book. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, she's so good. This is so good. The writing is so much better than other books. But you actually read both the original text and the revised text?
I did, yes.
Okay.
And I was so excited. I was so glad to have both to read back to back, because as soon as I finished it, I really wanted to start it over and see, like, from a plot hole perspective, like, okay, now that I know what's going to happen, let's go back to the start and see, like, okay, what was going on the other side of things behind the scenes with the culprit or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really cool in that case. But
yeah. So is the revised text not hugely different?
No, it's pretty much exactly the same. There's a couple of like paragraphs that get cut, a couple of slurs that get cut. Well, I mean, you read the original text. Yeah. So they just cut that entirely.
Okay.
And then for the police, I feel like in the original text, we dealt with a lot of police officers. And there's like a lot of cops around, like investigating after anytime there was a burglary, you have a ton of cops on the premises kind of running around looking at everything. But Nancy actually talks to a lot of them. That's not the case in the revised text. She really only deals with Ambrose and McGinnis. Like, there's still other cops around. She's just only talking mainly to them too. So
that makes sense.
I think, like, was it Detective Kelly or Lieutenant Kelly? I think she talks to him a little bit. I think he was like in the beginning of this one, but he doesn't have as big of a role in the
original text. We don't have Chief McGinnis, obviously.
Right.
So we have a different chief. And then, it's Detective Ambrose. But I didn't really specify the detectives in the summary, so that we won't really talk about them specifically. But there were just in general cops.
A lot of cops, but Ambrose plays a much bigger role in the revised. But that was pretty much the main difference. So.
Gotcha.
But otherwise, everything's the same. Not even like name changes like we normally have from original to revised. So
interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, as far as the story goes, overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it was a pretty good mystery. I did feel like it was, and again, I read the original text version. I felt like it was a much more indicative of like actual like police work or like detective work, which was interesting. I talked a little bit about this when we talked about the Hardy Boys book, because I feel like a lot of Nancy Drew mystery stories, in contrast to the Hardy Boys book that we read, are not really like process books. Like, we don't get to see Nancy investigating. We don't get to see her doing a lot of detective work. Like, clues tend to fall into Nancy's lap. And like, yeah, she'll investigate when she has the clue, but typically getting the clues is just kind of like a luck of the draw kind of a situation in a lot of Nancy Drew books, but not so in this one. So I was really pleased to see that Nancy was like actually trying to come up with ways to solve the case. And like some leads don't pan out. And then like sometimes, you know, like one that you don't think is going to lead anywhere does lead somewhere. And so I really enjoyed that about the book. And I feel like the mystery itself was pretty solid, although not super mysterious. I feel like from the get you kind of understand what is happening, and it's not really a surprise when you learn the full thing. But I still think, you know, overall it was interesting. It kept me interested. I was like, yeah, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder, you know, is what I think happening actually happening? Yes, but but I liked it. I liked it a lot. Yeah. So, what do you think?
Oh, I really enjoyed it. I feel like any good detective series needs at least one classic heist mystery, and that feels like what this is. With just like classic burglary, just hits all the like main, not even tropes, because at a certain point a trope just becomes classic enough if you do it well enough. And I feel like that's kind of what this was.
Yeah. Good.
I did have it spoiled by the CW show, actually. Like you said, what's happening is pretty obvious. It's not a huge like mystery about who's doing it. It's more of like, how are they pulling it off, and how are we going to catch them in the act is more of what the mystery is. But yeah, in the CW show, there is like a storyline that's not even like the main mystery storyline. It's more of like a Carson side plot where he's dealing with some legal case that he's working on, right? And so he has to interview all these witnesses on the case, and all the witnesses are different villains from the books.
Oh, that's nice.
Felix Raybolt was one. He was one from this book. And so I like, as soon as I saw the name, I'm like, well, I know who it is now. I just have to figure out how he was involved, you know, so it's kind of funny. But sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say the one thing I will say about this book, and this isn't a reason why I disliked it, but I just thought it was so funny. Nancy's a terrible friend in this book.
I know. Oh my gosh.
Like, this is probably goes on the books as maybe like the worst friend moments Nancy has. Like, truly like friend endangerment, like and like no remorse about it, and like
it was very weird to see everything that happened with George in this book. Yeah, obviously the point is that you never see her like this, but
fascinating, and we need to talk about that for sure in depth afterwards. That was crazy stuff. This is also technically, I guess, a holiday mystery in that it is centered kind of around the 4th of July.
I had no idea.
I know.
I love a good like classic summer mystery too.
It's interesting though, because we don't really have a whole lot of like 4th of July activities, which I was really hoping we would get like one. And we talk about going to like a picnic, but we don't actually do. And so really it's more of like a general summer vibe, I think, than anything else. But technically they mentioned the 4th of July, so I feel like we need to mention that too. So
that's fun.
Yes, very fun. Should we talk about the cover art?
Oh my gosh, yes. Actually, Nappy did both of the arts for this one. I think this was the first one. I would have to double check. It's the first one that he redid his own cover art for. Is that right?
I think that is correct. Yes, because this one the original text came out in 1953. And so by that time, that was very close to when Nappy took over for all of like the revisions. And so he started this one. And that's the one I actually have. And it features Nancy in this red dress, which is her costume for this masked ball, which we will learn it is like a Spanish dress because Nancy has appropriated someone's cultural identity as a costume. Isn't that lovely?
Well, that's what everyone does. That's how costume parties work, right? You just
So yeah, and she's wearing like a lace veil, and she has like a flower in her hair, and she's looking over her shoulder. She's standing against a tree, looking over her shoulder into kind of like this party scene that's happening inside of this room. And then there's kind of this dark, shadowy figure holding, I think that's a mask, one of the masks, trying to climb a trellis next to the window. And I really like this one. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about Nancy's facial expression exactly. I think maybe she looks a little too fearful than I think Nancy actually was in this moment. Nancy in this moment was essentially like, "Let me at this guy." But I really, really love the party scene in the background. And the whole like background setting is beautiful with like all of the foliage and just like the bright colors on all of the costumes inside. I just think it looks so pretty. And it's like, I want to go to there kind of a feeling, you know? So I love it. I love it. You have the other one though too, don't you?
Yes, I have both of them. I think I do prefer when Nappy would do more of a scene from a book rather than like the Visionary style or whatever, where it's like different elements kind of piled on top of each other. Although I do really like the depiction of Nancy on the revised cover a little bit better. I just think that her face and her expression look more like how I picture Nancy to be. But in this one, she is just kind of in the foreground of the photo. She's actually wearing a blue dress, but it looks like she's still wearing her same Spanish style shawl from that same scene that's on the other cover. But yeah, she's wearing the blue dress and she's just kind of peeking over her shoulder like maybe somebody's following her. And then behind her, we see the velvet mask, somebody wearing it. And
that is so creepy.
Yeah. It's like almost silly creepy. Like it's so
like a
weird
ghost
looking.
in a sheet kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
Which like I get. Like if because the masks in the book are described as being just like these velvet hoods. So it's not like it's like a small little mask where you can see part of the person's face. No, you see nothing except the little eyes.
Yeah. It's even worse than a ski mask. Yes. It's like even more menacing looking than that. Yeah.
I think if it were me, I would have chosen to not do just like individual holes for the eyes, but instead do maybe like a strip so that you could at least maybe see the bridge of the nose and maybe some eyebrows. So it looks a little less goofy Scooby-Doo like but yeah, the colors on it are also so dark. I feel like a lot of the times in Nappy covers he tends to use really bright poppy colors, but I guess probably just because it is a black velvet mask, there's really not a whole lot you can do with that.
Speaking of which, I just noticed she's carrying her little fan as well, but the colors are so dark it just kind of looked like the background a little bit. But
I see. I was gonna ask because I thought that maybe that she was holding something, but then I thought maybe it was just the shawl that I was seeing. But no, wow, interesting. Interesting.
Very pretty, both of them, either way. But I definitely like the original cover a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, shall we jump in?
3 words?
Oh, right. 3 words. Duh. Okay. One of the words has to be parties.
Oh, yes. Of course.
Because literally that's what this whole book is about. It's like party after party after party. There's literally a party every other day. That's not even an exaggeration. That's literally what it is. And Nancy goes to a party every other day.
Yeah.
I wish I was kidding. But that's the whole plot. And then
Parties is a good one.
We could say masks.
Of course, yeah.
Because even outside of like the whole velvet mask situation, there is all kinds of other stuff with masks. All the masks on the walls of the guy's office, which is another thing, a whole other thing entirely. All these indigenous masks, which this man has probably stolen, essentially.
That didn't quite make it into the revised as well. He's still really interested in masks. He just hasn't done the whole appropriation thing as much.
Well, and it's so funny to me too, because it's like we get in the original text version, we get like a page of like a description of like the history of some of these masks. And there's even like there's another part where they talk about like these Greek masks and they talk about the history of these Greek masks and the symbolism and all of that stuff. It literally no relevance to the plot at all. No relevance.
That was in the revised, the history of the Greek mask. Yeah.
So they really wanted us, I guess they just wanted it to feel spooky somehow. And that maybe talking about like the symbolic nature of like some of them, it was kind of eerie.
Yeah. That maybe just some edutainment as well.
Maybe,
Got to work
maybe.
the educational factor in there a little bit. But
Maybe so. But okay, so parties, masks. I think we could say friend endangerment.
Friend endangerment, yeah. Or even heist. I don't know.
Heist.
Or
Could be heist.
Police. I don't know. Party planning. I did love the party planning aspect of this. I'll say you guys do not know how much we love party planning. So to just
true.
have that like be a theme. Also, I worked at a costume shop in college. And so this just kind of reminded me of like, one, how much I enjoyed that job because it genuinely was very fun, but it also made me think like, it could have been so much more exciting. Like
if you had planned parties as well.
Yeah. Well, if we'd had all these mysteries going on during the party planning, you know.
If like one of one of the people who rented out your costumes did a heist while wearing. Right. Yeah. Woo!
Like, it could have been an even more exciting job. But darn it. Anyway.
Okay.
Very
so
fun. The friend endangerment, I think, is probably
friend endangerment?
Poor George.
I know.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so parties, masks, and friend endangerment.
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
You want to start our summary here?
Sure. Okay. So this summary is based off the original text version, not the revised text version, just so that you know that going in. And we can talk about throughout and at the end the differences between the original text and the revised.
Yes.
Okay, but to start off in the original text version, Nancy and Ned are heading to a masquerade ball being held by one of Nancy's school friends. Nancy has secured costumes for both of them. Like I said before, they're going as Spaniards because they have decided that they will be appropriating someone's culture for this costume party. But before they go, Carson tells them that they both need to be on their guard because there's been a recent string of thefts that seem to be occurring at wealthy people's parties. So it's possible that this party is also going to be hit by this same thief. Once at the party, they meet up with Bess and George, who are here with their dates, Dave and Bert. That is literally the only time we mention them in this book, and we never talk about them again. Bess is dressed as a Southern belle, and George is just dressed as a man.
Yep.
Further evidence of a queer George. Okay. Not a like particular man, not a famous man, just a man. Mm-hmm. Just a man.
We see right through it, Mildred.
So they're all led upstairs to look at some art that the family has on display. And Nancy notes that the display cases are unlocked. And George says that, this family never seemed to take great care of their valuables. So slight foreshadowing here as to what's going to happen. So they go downstairs to dance, and Nancy introduces Ned to Linda Seeley, who is an employee of this company called the Leitner Entertainment Company. And Linda's actually the one who picked out Nancy and Ned's costumes. That's where Nancy got the costumes from, that Linda's company that she works at. And Linda's also here at the party for work because this company also organizes parties and has organized this particular party. Afterwards, Nancy and Ned take some air outside, and Nancy ends up misplacing her mask. So they're like looking around for it to see if she's dropped it somewhere nearby when Nancy notices a man trying to climb a garden trellis, seemingly that leads to the library where all of the valuables are. When Nancy remarks on this, the man hears her say it and runs off, and he drops his own mask in his haste to get away. So Nancy goes and picks it up, and it's a black velvet hood. And Ned actually suggests that Nancy wear this one because she can't find her mask. This is bonkers to me.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, you know that someone's coming here, or you think that it's possible that someone could be coming here to rob this place. You literally saw this guy climbing the trellis to the library where all the valuables are hidden, or not hidden, on display.
Right.
And he drops this sinister black hood, and you're like, I know, I'm going to wear this instead of probably the little dainty thin mask that Nancy had. For a black hood on your Spanish dress costume.
First of all, the risk of lice alone from this. No, thank you.
Seriously. Oh my gosh.
Second of all, it was just on the ground. What are you doing?
Well, it's
probably
just
a bug
crazy
in
to
there.
me. It's crazy to me too that you want to put on a black velvet hood in the middle of what I'm sure is a sweaty ballroom.
Right.
It's gonna be hot. It's gonna be uncomfortable. You're not gonna be able to talk to nobody's gonna be able to hear you through that.
It's
And
July in the 50s.
it's
There's no air
July.
conditioning in there.
And everyone's dancing. You're also wearing this massive like gown,
Right.
which is probably also made of some incredibly unbreathable material, like silk or, you know, like velvet itself could be. And first of all, I do think it's because it's Ned's suggestion, and Ned has no concept of what this might actually be like. And also, he doesn't have to wear the velvet mask. Nancy has to wear it. So he doesn't care. He doesn't know, and he doesn't care. But I'm like, Nancy, why aren't you like, no, that's okay. I'll just go back into the party maskless. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It's a party. Nobody's going to call the police on me and be like, that girl's not wearing a mask. Get her, you know? Like, and also
That's so funny.
clearly this is a clue. Like, you know that this is a clue. You've got to know that this guy was up to no good. Anyway, okay, whatever. So she puts it on and wears it inside, and they go back to the party, and she and Ned dance. So Ned is dancing around with Nancy in a black hood. Like, this just seems crazy to me. I don't know why it's so crazy, but it seems really crazy to me. Anyway.
It has to look so out of place.
Yes!
I have to imagine at least every other woman in there is at least wearing those tiny little ones that just cover your eyes.
Yeah. Because that makes sense. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's not because it's like a fashion statement. It's because you want to be able, you're at a party. You want to be able to talk to people. You want to be able to communicate with your face. You do want people slightly to be able to recognize you.
Yeah. Be able to have a punch or something too.
Yes.
Like, you're in a ski mask now.
Anyway, they're dancing, and then someone else wearing an identical mask to Nancy shows up and cuts in. Which, like, Ned, why are you letting this guy just, like, who's wearing a black hood? I'm sorry. I'm never going to get over this. Anyway.
The executioner is here for Nancy.
But he cuts in, Ned lets him, and this guy asks Nancy why she didn't wear the other costume that she said she would. And so Nancy realizes that this man must be mistaking her for someone else because she's wearing a black hood. He shoves a note in Nancy's hand and then leaves as Ned cuts back in to, I guess, reclaim Nancy, whatever. Nancy then tells Ned that she's sure that this man was the party thief. And it's like, you're sure this guy was the party thief, not the guy who dropped his black hood on the ground outside after he was trying to climb a trellis. Anyway. And so she reads the note that he gave her, and it says, Eastport Trellis Company offers secondhand window sash on cash terms. In case of rain, every cloud has a silver lining. So obviously this seems like, you know, just like a jumble of nonsense, but really it's obviously must be some kind of code, and Nancy picks up on that pretty immediately. And they quickly realize that really the code is just that words have been added to the message to confuse whoever reads it. And so really the message is East Trellis, second window, cash, in case, silver. So it's saying that, okay, there's stuff to steal upstairs, take the window, to take the trellis and climb the window. Anyway, climb the trellis and take the window. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And so Nancy realizes, okay, so a theft is going to be occurring tonight if it hasn't already. And so she and Ned spring into action. Nancy tells Ned to stand guard by the trellis, and she runs upstairs to the library. Outside the library, though, Nancy runs into a woman wearing Nancy's lost mask.
Huh.
Yeah. So this must be the woman that the man actually intended to give this note to. And then the lights go out. And then the woman instantly attacks Nancy on the landing. She comes after her. They get into a physical fight. But everyone downstairs notices this altercation happening. And so she runs away. The lights come back on, and then a maid comes running out of the library screaming for the police because the house has been robbed. The police are called, and we learn that pretty much everything valuable that could have been stolen from the library was stolen. And Nancy explains to the police about the note that she was given and the mask that she found. But she persuades the police to let her keep the mask.
This should have been one of our 3 words, just the unlimited funding that the River Heights Police Department seems to have. Like, what do you mean they just have any disposable officer that they can lead? Like, Nancy's like, I need 6 plainclothesmen tonight, stat. And they're like, no problem. Let's get our on-staff doctor to come look you over. I'm like, what do you mean this small town has a doctor on staff in their police department?
That's such a good point.
Great.
I didn't think about that at all.
Endless amounts of money. When Nancy's like, I need this like sample analyzed for the chemical elements, they can just do it in like 40 minutes. It's a different lab. But to be fair, the police do have a lot of resources at their disposal that I feel like is a little bit on the unrealistic side for real life. Yeah.
I mean, I do. My thing that I was like, oh, this is so crazy is the fact that there are so many wealthy people in River Heights.
Oh, of course. Yes.
So many wealthy people to the fact where, and they're all having parties in the same week of summer. And I'm like, how? It's either that there are so many rich people, rich families in River Heights that we can be having a party every other day and it's like not even nobody blinks because there's just so many rich people, or it's that all of the rich people in River Heights chose to have parties in the same week.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
It just seems like one of those, like, the rich people are bored for the summer, so this is what they do. They just throw a party every other night. So
crazy. Anyway, sorry. So Nancy persuades the cops to let her keep the hood, and they're like, okay, but keep it safe. We're gonna want that back. Okay.
What universe would you hand your like only piece of evidence over to a teenager?
Seriously,
I love this.
Seriously. But so the police then like start harshly questioning Linda, and they end up trying to arrest her for the crime. And they only don't arrest her because Nancy like asks them to stop and then personally vouches for Linda. So it's like, who is Nancy to these people? Clearly, this is another book where she is just like goddess level status.
Of course.
So, yes. So this works. They don't arrest Linda. She's able to go free. And then Mrs. Hendrick, who is the host of this masked ball, asks Nancy if she will help solve this crime. And of course, Nancy agrees to help. Back at home, Nancy tells Carson about everything, and Carson tells Nancy that he's actually been hired by Mr. Leitner, the owner of the Leitner Entertainment Company, because several former customers are suing him for thefts that occurred at parties he organized. Ooh. So that's not good. And so Carson is going to take the case, but only if Nancy will help him. And of course, Nancy's going to help him. So the next day, Nancy goes to interview Mr. Leitner, and upon entering his office, she sees his office is decorated with a bunch of different indigenous people's masks that he's collected over the years. So another example of appropriation there. And Nancy asks if any velvet masks, or if he has any velvet masks. And he's like, oh, yeah, maybe. And he asks an employee to go show her into like the room where they keep all of their costumes to look for them.
This was one very strange addition to the revision, and Nancy like weirdly has a crush on this guy. The
Mr. Leitner?
The employee that Mr. Leitner calls over to have him show Nancy around. They take a lot of time to be like, and he and Nancy felt so much attraction toward each other. I'm like, okay, that was
really
irrelevant,
weird.
right?
I didn't even write this guy's name down because he was in it for 2 seconds.
Right? Yeah. And he is only in the revised for like 2 seconds. And maybe it is just because
that's so weird.
I feel like Harriet Stratemeyer took a lot of care to describe everyone as attractive. And Nancy's dress was always very attractive. And so maybe it was just that. But they did twice specify that Nancy found him very attractive and thought that he was a very attractive personality and all this stuff. It's like, okay, weird addition.
Well, it's so weird too, because it's like, obviously in the part of the revision is they were trying to make them all fit into 20 chapters instead of 25 chapters. So it's like, why are you adding this? Like, so the things that they add always seem to be, you always pay special attention to that because like, okay, well, they're not just taking away to cut down on things they see as unnecessary. They're adding something here to something they're trying to make shorter. So why?
And it really was only a sentence, but it's not like Ned has any less of a role in the revised or anything. She's still very much into Ned, but they just take a break to be like, and he was very attractive to Nancy. Okay. And he thought Nancy was very attractive as well. I can't remember the exact wording, but
that's so strange.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, anyway, so Nancy goes with this guy into this wardrobe room, and Nancy starts looking around, and she asks him about black velvet robes, because also the guy who's trying to climb the trellis was also wearing a black velvet robe, which is like, he was wearing a black velvet robe and a black velvet mask. This man must have been terrifying to behold. But anyway, and so they do have those same things. They have black velvet robes and black velvet masks at this in this wardrobe. And so she goes to take a look at the rack and sees one of these robes, and she sees that it has a torn hem. So this is the exact same cloak that Nancy has seen, because I think she also found a scrap of fabric at the scene with the velvet on. Anyway, but she knows that this is the exact cloak.
So Nancy goes to get Mr. Leitner to ask him about this, but when they get back into the room, she goes out of the room to find him and is like, come with me to see the cloak. And when they get back there, the cloak has disappeared. So she calls our very attractive employee friend back into the room, and he's like, nope, wasn't me. I didn't move it. But he's like, yeah, I definitely noticed the cloak that Nancy's talking about, because there was like the tear or whatever he noticed.
Okay, thought. Maybe the reason why they decided to say that he was super attractive is because they didn't want the reader to suspect him of having taken the cloak. And they're like, oh, well, if we specify that he's attractive, that means he can't be a villain.
Because he's trustworthy.
Not ugly.
Yeah. Anyone with kind eyes or a pretty face cannot be the villain, right?
Right.
So, oh, that's a good thought. I like that. I bet you that's exactly 100% what it was. Oh my gosh.
Because it's like, that's obviously what I did. Is like, when I read it the first time, Nancy's literally gone for 30 seconds. And so the guy, maybe it's maybe a few minutes, because I think she ends up having to go outside to find Mr. Leitner. But the employee was in there. And so it's like, well, obviously he had the ability to take it, move it somewhere, hide it somewhere. So it must have been him. But really, that's not what happens, which we'll soon learn. So it's really just like kind of it's not even really implied by the text, but it's just such an obvious conclusion to draw. And so I wonder if they put that in there because they're like, we don't want the reader to get distracted by that and like ruin the flow of suspense here, you know?
I think that's what it is. You've solved it. Definitely. Yeah. And I think she even does say something like she trusts that he was telling the truth or something after that. Yeah. Okay. No, I definitely buy that that's what it was. But yeah, he corroborates her story to Mr. Leitner, and they both say like, yeah, the robe was right here and now it's gone. So Mr. Leitner asks all the other employees that are present in the office that day, and they all say, nope, they didn't move it either. But Nancy knows that someone must be lying here because somebody must have moved it. So she and Mr. Leitner look through their records a little bit and see that the missing cloak was rented out to someone named James Flaubert, who lives in a nearby town. And it was actually checked out by Linda Seeley. And this is weird because Linda just told us that she didn't rent any velvet masks or cloaks to anyone for that night or whatever. So Mr. Leitner calls Linda into his office, and Linda thinks that she must be being framed. Like somebody clearly just forged the slip and put her initials on it. So Nancy decides that, okay, let's follow up on James Flaubert. So she does, and they realize it is indeed a fake name. No one in the town that he supposedly lives in goes by that name. So,
which that is one of the fakest names I've ever heard.
Right.
Flaubert?
Right.
Flaubert? What's the etymology of that?
Right. Like, why? What's wrong with John Smith? Like, come on. Anyway, so Nancy reports all this to the police chief, who tells her that he's been working the angle that maybe the thefts were an inside job from the Leitner company. And that's why, of course, they tried to arrest Linda last night, because they assume it has to be somebody from the Leitner company. And Mr. Leitner's assistant manager, whoever, Peter Tombar, he accused Linda and says, oh, she was the one working all these parties. She must have been somehow involved with the thefts because she had the opportunity. Nancy goes to a little soda shop to take a lunch break at this point and runs into Linda while she's there. And Linda's obviously unhappy with everything going on. She doesn't like that she's been accused of this. And she tells Nancy that Mr. Tombar is not the best boss ever. He's super strict and really awful to her. And like, has it out for Linda. Like,
Yeah.
if she's 4 seconds late, he'll act like she's the worst employee in the world. Except he's not beyond reproach either, because he happens to take 2-hour lunch breaks every single day. Not in the office either. Like, he'll just leave for like 2 hours every day and then just like wander back in the middle of the afternoon. So that's a little suspicious. And Nancy finishes up her lunch, and as she's about to leave, she sees Mr. Tombar leaving the office across the street with a package under his arm. And she's like, oh, that might be the missing cloak, right? So she wants to follow him, but she actually walked to downtown that morning. She didn't take her car, so she has to like find a cab, hail the cab, and then convince the cab to follow Peter Tombar. She does do this, but Tombar eventually notices that he's being followed, so he is able to make a chase and evade them. Nancy is like, well, obviously that means that he's up to something if he's trying to run away from me. So the next day she talks to Linda again, and she learns that Mr. Tombar usually takes a package like this whenever he leaves for lunch every day. But Linda's like, I don't know what the package is or what that's about. So it's just very interesting. But then Nancy's like, okay, well, what other events does your company have coming up? Maybe they have something planned for one of the future parties or something. And so she tells her kind of what their upcoming event schedule looks like. And Nancy quickly realizes that an upcoming wedding that they have planned for like the following week or whatever, it's being planned by this very wealthy family in town. And it seems like this could be a very good target for these thieves, because they'll have a lot of people around at this party with a lot of valuables on display. So Nancy's like, what if you got me an invitation to the wedding, and then I can be there on hand to investigate and see if anything is like going strangely. So Linda is able to do this. Mr. Leitner somehow agrees to like give her an invitation or whatever, and he's also beefed up security for the event. They have decided that invitations will be checked at the door regardless. So if you don't have an invitation, you're not getting in. And they've hired a lot of plainclothes police officers to be posted every single door. Again, just the limitless resources of the River Heights Police Department. It's like they have their entire police force at every single party almost.
I know they specifically say that these are police people, but I do wonder if that was just like a term that they were using, and this was just like hired security.
Maybe.
Because it does seem like they do say that like they've hired them, you know? And so like unless like there are policemen for hire.
There are. You can do that.
Really?
Like, if you have an event, you can contact your local police department. And oftentimes that's like a law. If you have alcohol served, you have to hire a police officer to come.
But do you pay them? Like from the... Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, you would have to pay them, obviously. But yeah, you can do that. But they do also later, Mr. Leitner hires PI as well. So so he's also doing that as well. So I'm not surprised that they have many sources of people to hire from, but it still does seem like a lot of just River Heights police people here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the chief of police here, who I can't even remember his name in the original text, but it's McGinnis in the revised. Duffy?
Denny.
Thank you.
Denny.
Yes. So the chief of police is there, and he comes up to Nancy and tells her that they actually just got a tip-off to be on the lookout for a crook with an English accent. Apparently, one of the main thieves or whatever in this Velvet Gang, they keep calling it the Velvet Gang. I think it's kind of funny. But one of the main crooks from this gang tends to put on an Oxford-ish accent, and that's like his disguise or whatever. So funny. So Nancy is like, yes, okay, we will be on the lookout for some random English guy. And then she kind of does a sweep of the party. And she notices that all of the wedding silver is up on the second floor of the house, kind of on display in just some room. And there is just one very elderly servant there, kind of stationed in that room, but there's no like other cops or anybody there. They've just let this one guy be in charge of the most valuables at the party. But anyway, she goes downstairs and talks to the chief about this. But then as they're talking, there's kind of a commotion coming from the front door. because it seems like the police have caught this English guy. He is saying that his name is Lord Atchfield and that he just mislaid his invitation. Step aside, let me in right away, and is demanding that they let him into the party. But they're like, oh no, this is the Oxford guy, like for sure. He's trying to sneak in. So Nancy's able to go over to the hostess and she confirms that, yeah, they do actually know this man, and she just forgot to like put him on the list or whatever, but he is genuinely invited to this party. He's not a fake English guy putting on an accent.
This is crazy to me.
Yeah.
That like, we'll have to talk about this later too, but it's like, if you're a police officer and you're like, okay, we got to tip off someone in the gang has an English accent. We need to be on the lookout for a guy trying to get into the party with an English accent. You don't confirm first that there's not an English person legitimately coming to be at the party. Like, you're not like, hey, real quick, hostess, whoever, run through the people on the list really quick for me and tell me if any of them are English from the UK. Just so I know.
Why would we do that? Oh, this is just so funny. Because I think even after they kind of settle it, Nancy even makes a comment. She's like, I did read in the paper that there was supposed to be some English lord coming to visit town or whatever. Yes. So this must be him. It's like, well, seems convenient like timing.
A big deal. Like,
right.
If you have like someone from England visiting who's a legitimate lord, like in small town River Heights, which in the bum F middle of nowhere, you know, you would know about that. You should know about that. And I feel like if you got a tip off that someone involved in the heist has an English accent, you would need to know about like just English people in town.
Sure.
As a police force, you know?
There can't have been that many legitimately British people in the 50s.
Can't have been. Not visiting River Heights in this 1 week of the summer.
Right.
Like,
oh my gosh.
Anyway.
It's so funny. Oh, man. So anyway, we get this settled and he is a legitimate guest. So he's able to go in and join the wedding or whatever. But then Nancy's like, oh, darn it. This whole altercation was a pretty big distraction. So if anybody had wanted to slip in unnoticed, they probably would have done it just now while we were all arguing over this.
Right.
So she runs back upstairs and finds the elderly servant unconscious on the floor. And a man wearing a velvet mask is standing right in front of the table with the wedding silver on it. So Nancy actually manages to startle this man when he comes in, and he drops the jewelry that he was holding and he just runs off. Nancy chases him and she's like shouting for someone to come help her as she's chasing him, but he is able to get away. So whatever, we go home, and back at home, Nancy finds that Bess and George are there waiting for her. She tells them all about the party, and Bess is like very concerned that like, oh, now the thieves are going to have it out for you, Nancy, and they're going to try to seek revenge against you for ruining their plans or whatever. And just as she's saying this, Nancy does receive a threatening phone call telling her she needs to mind her business or else, and also she needs to get rid of the mask that she still has. They give her like instructions to go like do this dead drop at a cemetery and all these like specific things she has to do with the mask, and Nancy's like, well, I'm definitely not doing that, but whatever. But anyway, Bess and George go home, and Nancy starts to think about this call a little bit. Obviously, she has to give the mask back to the police anyway, so she can't get rid of it, even if she did feel like she needed to or whatever. But there must be some reason why the thief wants this hood back so badly, right? So she's like, wait a minute, I haven't actually investigated this hood. Like, I need to look it over for clues, right?
Yeah. So she gets the hood and she ends up ripping out the lining, and she sees several numbers written in succession. It's like 626, 628, 7175. And she's kind of baffled by this, but sure, again, this must be some kind of code. So Carson is actually currently away right now on business, but he calls soon after this to check in, and Nancy tells him about these numbers that she's found in the hood. And Carson says, oh, actually those sound like dates because it's June, baby. So 6/26, June 26, 6/28, June 28th, 7/1, July 1st, 7/5, July 5th.
Thank you, Carson.
Makes
I love
so much
that.
sense. I know. So Carson's like, Nancy, maybe you should ask the Lightner Company if they have parties planned that coincide with those dates. And so the next day, Nancy calls Linda, and sure enough, she confirms that they do have parties planned on all of those dates, except for the last one. They don't have anything planned on 7/5. Interesting. Okay. Linda also tells Nancy that last night someone actually broke into the Lightner Company and stole a bunch of costumes. They haven't finished the inventory yet to know of what all was stolen, but Linda says that several more velvet robes are missing. So also all of the masks that were in Mr. Lightner's office are missing too. After this call, Togo starts barking like crazy, which according to this book, at least he rarely does. But according to every other Nancy Drew book I've ever read, I beg to differ. But
Good
anyway,
boy, Togo.
I know. So Nancy and Hannah try to figure out what's bothering Togo, and they see a shadow cross in front of the front porch. So Nancy's pretty sure that the house is being watched by someone. So she lets Togo out, and sure enough, he runs all the way around the house and seems to be following like a scent, and it leads Nancy to a window outside the telephone and then to the road. So Nancy thinks that probably someone was here spying on her phone calls that she just had. So a little while later, someone knocks on the door with a telegram, and it says, "Have found what the dates mean. No need to contact Lightner. Come by hotel this evening. Bring mask. Dad." This is weird. Immediately, Nancy is suspicious of this, because why would Carson ask her to meet him at his hotel if he was coming home this evening, which he said he would be? And why would he need to see the mask if in person, Nancy had already told him the contents of it, But Nancy decides, okay, well, I'm going to call Carson's hotel to confirm that this is legitimately from him. Carson's actually out, but the hotel does say that the telegram was sent from their premises and charged to Carson's account. So it seems like it might be a legitimate telegram. Regardless, Nancy decides to call up Bess and George and hatch a plan just to be extra cautious. She has Hannah rent a blonde and black wig from the Lightner Company and has George pose as her while she poses as George. So George wears the blonde wig and Nancy wears the black wig. And while Bess is going to be the one who actually carries the hood herself. And so they all get on a train to go to the town where Carson is staying, and Nancy and Bess sit separately, behind George, who is up ahead of them on the train, with Nancy's briefcase. So they're on board the train when they notice two men and a woman get on board. Two of them sit near to George, and then one sits by Bess and Nancy. But just as they approach a busy station, Bess and Nancy see the woman lean over George. And when she stands back up, we see George slumped over in her seat. Oh, this is horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So the man and the woman then pretend that George is their daughter who has taken ill, and they carry her off of the train. And obviously Bess and Nancy jump up to try to stop them, but the man sitting next to them stands in their way and won't let them past. So they try to take the back exit off of the train, but the man also gets in front of them there, and they have to try to physically push him out of the way. But by the time they're able to and they get onto the street, it's too late, and the two others have gotten into a car and driven away with George.
This is so scary.
I know.
I would have been violent at this point. Get out of my way. Ugh.
Yeah, also the other man who was blocking them has now fled at this point too, so they can't follow him either. So meanwhile, George is partially conscious in the back of this car. We kind of flash somewhat to her perspective. Obviously, the woman has drugged her with something, and they start to search George's bag and soon realize that actually this is not Nancy Drew. This is George in a wig. And Nancy has pulled one over on them. They realize they've been got, right? So they drug George again, intending to try to get her to talk or something, but they end up giving her too high of a dose and George passes out again. And so they end up just dumping George and her belongings out next to a tree by the road. This is so
at least they let
terrifying.
her go. Like,
I know, but still, like this whole thing is so horrible. But like getting abducted, drugged, first of all. So like you're like out of it. I'm sure you feel horrible. I'm sure you feel sick. And like being in this, they're like threatening her too. They like say awful things to her about like Nancy and about her, and then like the feeling of threat that you must be under, and then to just get drugged again, you're unconscious, just dumped on the side of the road.
You physically cannot move. You can't fight. Like,
who knows what would happen to you? Like, who else could come by, like, while you're unconscious? Like,
it's so scary.
Yeah.
So at this point, Nancy and Bess have flagged down a police officer, but he doesn't want to help because the car went outside of his jurisdiction or something. So he's like, yeah, we have to wait for the state police or whatever. So they do. They have to wait for the state police. And when he finally gets there, they drive down the same road where the car took George, but they don't spot the car. But they do come along George on the side of the road. Thank goodness she's still there. So they stop. They rush over to her. She's just regaining consciousness right now. And when she sees Bess and Nancy, she just starts sobbing. Obviously, she's very confused about what just happened. She doesn't know half of what just happened to her, obviously. And we realize, of course, she has been drugged. George even starts begging Nancy to stop investigating this ordeal because it has terrified her so much. She keeps saying things that are very uncharacteristic for George, and Nancy and Bess are both very, like, kind of shocked by this. They end up taking her to the doctor, who says that it's impossible to determine what drug she was given. I guess blood tests weren't a thing back then, but whatever. But they get her home so that she can recover a little bit. And then by the time Nancy has arrived home, Carson has arrived home as well. And we learn that the telegram was, of course, a hoax. After they get George home, she decides that she wants to go investigate the train station a little bit more to see if she can maybe find some other clues from where they took George. She remembers seeing the bad guys drop something as they fled, like some small metal thing. She kind of saw it glint in the sun or whatever. So she goes to look in that area and finds like a metal tag on the ground. And Nancy recognizes this as a department store charge plate. The plates have been like run over by a car though, so it's like impossible to read what was on it. She can only make out parts of a word like "tay" and "house account" or "house ac," like account maybe. And there's a department store in River Heights called Taylor's, so we think maybe this is a Taylor's department account card.
Quick side note too, because I actually had to look this up. I had no idea what a department store charge plate was. I had never heard of this. But so if any of you are listening, it's essentially like a credit card, like a store credit card. And I think like an early version of this. And so this is like one that would have been given to their employees. Funny enough, like department store charge plates are like the first kinds of credit cards that existed, which I thought was really interesting piece of history. So yeah.
Yes, I remember that from the original text of Old Clock. When Nancy goes into the department store, the Topham sisters are there like throwing a fit or whatever. They make like a note about Nancy using her charge card or whatever for that department store. Obviously, that didn't make its way to the revised, I don't think. But I think that she has had her own. Obviously, Nancy has her own accounts or whatever. Yes. She doesn't have to wait for Carson to give her allowance. But yes, anyway, so we find these charge plates, and Nancy decides that she's going to go ask the manager of this Taylor's department store about it. So she goes, and he says that, yes, this was issued to an employee, but he can't read the number on it. Obviously, it's been kind of destroyed, so there's no way of knowing who. And Nancy's like, well, I know how you could find out who this belongs to. And he asks her how. And she says, well, if you just ask everybody to turn their cards in, like say like, oh, you're going to change them out or whatever, then whoever lost theirs obviously can't turn theirs in. Process of elimination. We can figure out who it is. And he's not very keen on helping. He kind of agrees to do it, but makes it seem like he doesn't really care to find out who the criminal is. And Nancy kind of implies that, like, your store hires criminals, so you need to figure out who's doing this. And he's like, oh, I guess, fine, whatever. So he kind of agrees. And then Nancy decides, okay, well, let's look into what Mr. Tombar has been up to lately. So she calls Linda, and Linda tells her that Mr. Tombar didn't come into work today. They actually have like a concert that they're going to put on that night as one of the events for the Lightner Entertainment Company. And Linda is kind of in charge of putting on that event. So she invites Nancy to go with her that night. Really, they're just going to go have some fun, supposedly. Supposedly this is some famous singer or whatever that is coming to do this performance. But Nancy agrees to go. And when she arrives at the party the following day, Mr. Tombar is there and says that Linda isn't coming because he had some other event that he needed help with. So he made her go to that one instead.
What a tool.
Yeah. So that's a huge bummer, right? And now Nancy has to be extra careful when she's investigating because it seems like Mr. Tombar is like kind of on her and like is watching what she's up to. So the concert starts and Nancy uses this opportunity to kind of sneak into the hall and upstairs. And then she runs into a maid who tells her that there's a woman resting in the coat room upstairs, like where everybody had just kind of laid their coats on a bed, I guess. And the maid has gone to get tea for this woman because she's ill. And Nancy's like, oh, well, that sounds like a ruse, obviously. So she runs up to that room to see what's going on in there and sees the same woman in costume who attacked her at the masked ball. This woman is like rummaging through a drawer, stealing jewelry out of it. But before Nancy can do anything about this, though, she is seized from behind by a guy with an obviously very fake British accent. And he ends up wrapping Nancy in a comforter and like tangling her in it, and then like she's also tangled in the coats that are on the bed, and he like throws her on the bed and tries to like almost suffocate her, like he's like physically holding her down so that she can't move. And then the woman finishes her stealing and then they both get out of there. So Nancy managed to untangle herself from the comforter and all the coats, but by this time the thieves have already fled. So Nancy goes and tells the hostess what has happened. The hostess calls the police, and Nancy comes up with the idea, hey, what if we kind of do the same thing with the charge plates? We do process of elimination with the coats and see who might have left their coat here. Because obviously the villain wouldn't have time to grab their coat on the way out, I guess. So they wait for the police to come, and the police like oversee this whole process of everyone picking up their coats, and they have the hostess like visually identify each guest as being a legitimate guest before they let them leave. But they do all this, and when they're done, they are left with one woman's coat. They look through it and they don't find anything significant about it, except there is a black hood in the pocket, a black velvet hood in the pocket. And it definitely belongs to the thief, obviously, so they take this to police evidence. The next day, Nancy's like, we never tested the ink that was used to like write the numbers on the inside of the velvet hood. So let's look into that a little bit more and see if maybe we could track down a lead just through the ink that they used. Mm-hmm. So she asked Linda about this, and Linda says, yeah, we use this like special ink on our clothes. And Linda's able to like sneak a bottle of the ink out of the Lightner Company to Nancy. And this is when Nancy like takes this to the lab, and they like rush order the sample for her. And they do determine it is an exact match. This special ink that they use at the company was used to write the dates on the inside of the hood. So therefore, obviously, this must be an inside job from the Lightner Company. So she has Carson arrange with Mr. Lightner because I guess they're old buddies or whatever. She asks Carson to have Mr. Lightner temporarily hire Nancy.
I think it's because he's working, like Lightner has hired Carson to help him with the case. So I think that's just why I don't think they're necessarily friends.
They do say that they're old friends.
Oh, they are?
They've known each other a long time. Yeah.
Who's Carson not friends with? I should know.
There's something, I think it's, it's when he's firing Tombar. He says to Tombar, like, you don't treat my oldest friend's child that way or something like that.
Right.
So,
okay.
But yeah, so Carson calls Mr. Lightner and is like, hey, you should have Nancy like come work for you for a day or whatever so that she has like a cover to be there investigating. And he agrees. And so the next day she's going to plan to sleuth around the office. So she gets there, and honestly, this just reminds me of like a game where you just have all these chores before you can proceed with the actual mystery, because she has to do all this like filing and paperwork. And
it's Nancy's internship.
Yes, Nancy's just doing an internship for the day. And she's like, okay, I know that Tombar supposedly takes these like 2-hour lunches, always gets a weird package and just goes for a few hours. I'm going to skip my own lunch and just wait for him to leave, and then I'm going to follow him. But he never leaves. So it was all for nothing. And then it's 5 p.m. and then it's time to go home. So whatever, we don't learn anything that day. But when she gets home, she gets a call from Linda, and Linda says, I've just been fired.
Oh my God. So Linda tells Nancy that Mr. Tombar just discovered the missing ink and like blamed her for it. Like that was his excuse for firing her. And Nancy's not upset by this at all.
No.
Like she doesn't feel bad at all, even though she asked Linda to do this. So this is another example of Nancy being a terrible friend. But she does reassure Linda that she'll either help her get her job back or find her another job. She's like,
thanks.
okay, Nancy, whatever. But this is just like Nancy's like such a class thing. Like Nancy does not understand the importance of a job. Like I'm sure Linda supports herself. So like for Nancy, who clearly does not. Also, like it's so funny to me because like she goes in for this one day of work and like where she's like filing all day and it's like so exhausting to her. And she like skips her lunch break or whatever and she's like, oh, I'm just so exhausted, this is so horrible or whatever. Oh my God. And so like when Linda gets fired, she's like, oh, don't worry, Linda, I'll help you get another one. She's, oh my God, Nancy. Anyway,
she's such a snitch in this too. There's so many times where she's like, does your manager know that you took an extra 5 minutes for lunch today? Like, okay, Nancy.
So anyway, so she says this to Linda, but then Nancy gets a call from the office as well, and Nancy gets fired too. And Mr. Leitner calls her, goes like, you can't come back anymore, Nancy.
Oops.
So ruh-roh. Honestly, this is so funny to me because this seems like the real low point in the book. Like, you know how like in like a plot, it's like you have all of these, you know, the plot keeps rising or whatever. And then your main character has like a really, really low point before they get like their big break or whatever. This is that low point for Nancy. Linda gets fired and then she gets fired and she's like, I don't know what to do. And also George is still acting really like depressed and like terrified. And she keeps trying to ask Nancy to like stop investigating, and Nancy keeps trying to like reassure her, but it's not really working. And so Nancy is like, if I could just solve this case, then maybe George would get better, which honestly, this is really sad. But also it's crazy to me because Nancy also doesn't seem to feel guilty about this at all, despite the fact that George was kidnapped, because people thought that George was Nancy and it was Nancy's plan to have George pose as her. Anyway, whatever. So Nancy decides to go visit Mr. Leitner. She makes him promise to give Linda her job back if Nancy can prove that Linda is innocent of like all of the thefts, and he agrees to this. But at this point, though, Mr. Leitner obviously knows that through Carson that Nancy is investigating, you know, this ring of thefts or whatever. And so Nancy asks Mr. Leitner if she can come to like a lecture that the Leitner Company is hosting the next day for someone, and he agrees. She also helps him secretly mark the invitations to this lecture so that no one can like fake an invitation to get in. The next day at the lecture, Mr. Tombar and Mr. Leitner are there, despite Mr. Leitner having told Mr. Tombar like not to come, that like his presence was not needed there. But like, I guess Mr. Tombar convinced Mr. Leitner that his presence was necessary, which Nancy is like really peeved about. So whatever. And also Mr. Tombar is being like horrible. He's being like a terror to everyone involved. He's like yelling at like this, not even the Leitner Company staff, it's just like household staff of where like this lecture is being held. He's like yelling at the mates because like the chairs aren't straight or something, like just being horrible.
No.
So Mr. Leitner personally stands at the front door at this event and checks the invitations, and so far all have been legitimate. So Nancy decides to go outside to see if anyone is like prowling around trying to get into the house when she finds a man unconscious near his car. And so just as she stops by him to try to like revive him, and just as she like turns towards the house to look, she sees all of the lights in the house go off. This is really funny to me too, because Nancy is actually kind of really annoyed that she has to stay here next to this unconscious guy instead of running back into the house to see what's going on. But she is able to revive this man, and he tells Nancy that he just remembers getting out of his car and then going lights out. So someone must have like hit him over the back of the head. But now his wallet and his invitation to the party are missing. So undoubtedly the thieves stole his invitation to get into the party and are now inside robbing the place, right? Eventually, Nancy gets this guy into the house and she talks to Mr. Leitner. He apparently wasn't like concerned when the power went out. He just thought it was just a power outage, like a random thing. My guy.
Okay.
My guy, you're involved in a lawsuit right now because of this string of thefts. Maybe be a little bit more on your guard. I don't know. Maybe this is why people are suing you. You know?
This seems like their MO to just cut the lights right before they do the theft. So,
right.
Yeah,
this is not the first time this has happened. So anyway, but upon Nancy's urging, they do organize a search and learn that indeed several valuables are missing from the second floor and the thieves are nowhere to be found. So the police take charge and Nancy goes home. And the next day she checks in with both Beth and George. George is still in bed and acting terrified. She's consistently bringing up the case and asking Nancy to drop it. And neither Nancy or Beth know what to do about this. So Nancy takes Beth to Taylor's department store. Nancy checks in with the staff and she learns that after the manager gave the order for the employees to return their charge plates, there was another order put out, not by the manager. It was like anonymous, like reversing that order and saying, no, don't turn in your charge plates. And so they didn't get a lot of them back. And at this point, the manager is like too frustrated by the whole situation and won't do it anymore. So it seems like this lead didn't pan out. That's a bust. So Nancy and Beth just do some shopping instead. They're like looking for a present for Beth's mom when the shop assistant shows them a miniature portrait. And this looks just like one of the items that was stolen from the very first masked ball. Because remember, they all went up there to look at all of the things in the cases. And so Nancy recognizes this from then. So Nancy buys the miniature, which it's actually like priced really cheaply or something. And so it's like, Nancy's like, yes, I will have that. Thank you. And she asked the assistant if there were any other items that came with this particular shipment. She ends up talking to the department store's manager, or I think this particular department in the store's manager. So if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells her that this item, was marked way too low. He's not going to make her return it or anything, but he's going to have a word with the guy who was responsible for marking it. Apparently this guy's name is Bert Snecker. I was just so close to Bert Sneaker, but not Snecker. And Google kept trying to autocorrect me when I was typing it. It's like, do you mean sneaker? No. It's Snecker. I promise, Snecker.
But what a name for a culprit, too. He's sneaky. Mm-hmm. No, take out the A. Snaky.
So Nancy takes this miniature portrait and goes back to the home of the hosts of that first ball, Mrs. Hendricks. And she gives the miniature to her, and Mrs. Hendricks does identify it as being her stolen property. And so Mrs. Hendricks wants to call the police, but Nancy tells her to wait because she wants to investigate more without like alerting the department store to anything going on. And she thinks that the police will alert the department store. I don't know. Whatever. So the next day, Nancy goes back to Taylor's, hoping to find this Bert Snecker guy, but he hasn't come in to work today. And so Nancy ends up getting his address and driving to his house, which is so intense, Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
And she's about to pull into like a space outside of his house when she sees a familiar car driving away. It's Mr. Tombar's.
So Nancy goes on with her plan to visit Mr. Snecker, and she ends up meeting Mrs. Snecker, who tells her that her husband is sick upstairs in bed, and she's complaining about his behavior when he's sick and how he just wants to be waited on hand and foot. It's kind of funny. But she also starts just like telling Nancy about how her husband doesn't get paid well enough and his salary's too low. But it's not a problem, actually, because her husband has a quote unquote another angle that he's using to get them onto what she calls Easy Street. They're going to be moving to a nicer apartment soon, that he has some other source of income. And Nancy's like, oh, moving like your friends, the Tombars? And Mrs. Snecker's like, oh, yeah. Wait a minute. And she like realizes that she said a little bit too much here and basically just like shuts the door in Nancy's face. But this does tell us that, yes, they know each other, possibly are working together, right? So Nancy goes to the Leitner Company and she learns that their most recent event went smoothly. No thefts, no break-ins, anything like that. And she asks Mr. Leitner, okay, well, can you hire Linda back? And he says, maybe, as long as Mr. Tombar will agree to it, because hiring is Mr. Tombar's department, so he's not going to step on that, I guess. Okay. Whatever. So Nancy goes to talk to Mr. Tombar about this, but he's like having some sort of meeting in his office, so she has to wait outside the door. And while she's waiting, she overhears an argument inside. Mr. Tombar is like arguing with a man, somebody named Harris, and he basically tells Harris to like get out and quit bothering me at work. And it's very strange. So he kicks Harris out, whoever this guy is, and he sees Nancy, and I guess because he was already in a bad mood, starts yelling at her about eavesdropping. He's so angry that he starts to act like he's about to attack her. And at this exact moment, Mr. Leitner comes in behind Nancy and sees all this and fires him on the spot for this behavior. Yes, Mr. Leitner, thank you. So Nancy leaves and she heads to see Carson at his office, who we learned from Carson. So I guess Mr. Tombar had like given a fake story about who Harris was. And Carson is like, no, Mr. Harris is an attorney. He like some sort of real estate something is his area of expertise with law. So Nancy goes to ask Mr. Harris, like, what were you doing talking to Mr. Tombar? And Mr. Harris is very nice about this. He tells Nancy everything. He's like, oh, I was trying to persuade Mr. Tombar to sell a piece of property that he owns. There's this inn called the Blue Iris Inn that's kind of like way on the outskirts of River Heights. And he has like a client that really wants to buy the place. And he's trying to convince Tombar to sell it, basically. So Nancy thinks that this must be where Tombar is going on his lunch every day, because it is maybe about an hour away. So if he were to go there every day, it would take him about 2 hours round trip. So she and Bess arrange that they are going to go to this Blue Iris Inn the next day. So they do this. They get a little picnic or whatever. They drive out to this Blue Iris Inn, and they see that it is extremely run down, pretty spooky looking, actually. Everything is really overgrown and boarded up, and they are able to kind of sneak around the back and peek into a window where they see a ton of crates. And Nancy's like, okay, well, clearly this is where they're keeping the stolen goods, right? But they can't like break in and enter because that obviously would be breaking a law. We can't do that. Right. So they decide that they're going to go back into town and get further evidence before asking the police to investigate. I don't know why we can't just have the police investigate right now, but they decide that they need more evidence.
The most annoying plot point to me. And clearly it's just a way that like to delay us so that we can't solve the mystery yet, because if Nancy were to break in and see what's in the crates, this would solve the mystery and it would be over. But it's so annoying to me because also it's like Carson who cautions her not to jump the gun and like to get more evidence before doing this. But like the police already think that the heists are an inside job. And so it's crazy to me that like Nancy doesn't call them and be like, hey, you know, this guy who worked at the Leitner Company, who was there at all of the thefts pretty much, he has this piece of property and inside are these suspicious looking crates. I think you should check it out. I think that's enough grounds for like a warrant or whatever. Like maybe you should go in there. No, we don't do that because we don't have enough evidence yet.
Yeah, I got a little frustrated with Carson at this point because he's like, you don't want to like, you know, make yourself look bad if it's not the stolen goods in those crates. Like, nobody will take your word for it, Nancy. And there's also something like Tombar had only recently purchased this blue irisin himself. And supposedly when he did this, there was like an opportunity to also buy all the furniture or something, or all the furnishings of the inn. And so Carson's like, you need to find out, because maybe there's something else in those crates. Like, it's just boxed up old knickknacks and furniture.
Yeah.
Even though it sounds like the crates are smaller than a couch would be or whatever. But Carson's like, you need to like verify that it's not the furniture first before you get the police involved. And so we have to like go on this other side plot thing where Nancy like tracks down the auctioneer and ask him whether or not the furniture did indeed get sold to Tombar. It's really frustrating. It's also not relevant at all.
No.
So anyway, Nancy ends up getting called by Mr. Leitner, though, and he tells her that he did indeed hire Linda back. So wonderful. And he also asks her to investigate at another party that is occurring tonight. Today is the first, I believe. So it's one of the dates that's written on the inside of the hood. And so Nancy excitedly agrees, of course, because we think something is going to happen tonight. So she actually arranges for Ned to come with her as well. So she's going to dress up as a maid, and Ned is going to be like a coat check boy so that they can have like a cover for investigating at the party. Nancy actually gets assigned to a different room than Ned is working in. And she is actually paired with another maid who like tells her how to run a coat check or whatever. It's kind of funny. But so the party gets started and everything is going fine. But then about halfway through the party, a man with a slight British accent comes over to the coat check room and asks for his date's coat. And Nancy's like, oh, is your date like sick or whatever? I can go help her. Just tell me who she is. I'll go see her. He's like, no, just get the coat. And so she goes to get the coat. And when she's like grabbing it or whatever, she peeks in the pocket. And what does she find? A black velvet hood. So clearly this man is getting the coat so that they can go pull off the heist.
So Nancy doesn't let on that anything is wrong, though, and so she just gives over the coat and the mask to the guy. But she really like does a quick change into like a party costume or whatever, or a party dress, and goes to find Ned. She points out to Ned that man that came to get the coat, and they follow him. They see him give the coat to an elderly woman with gray hair, but then he like goes a different way. So they split up. Ned follows the man, and Nancy follows this woman that he just gave the coat to. Ned ends up chasing this guy all the way into the basement, where Ned gets thumped on the head pretty good and like can't stop this guy from turning off the power to the whole house. So all the lights go out, which is likely why the guy was headed down here the whole time. Meanwhile, Nancy has followed this woman to this one hallway in the house where Nancy knows there's like this valuable peacock statue or something. She sees this woman and realizes that she's actually in disguise. She's not elderly at all. She's just like wearing a white wig and pretending to like walk with like a limp or something. So Nancy goes to stop this woman, but then the lights go out. Nancy's like groping around in the dark, and she ends up hearing the voice of a detective on the force that she recognizes, and he like yells out for her to stop. So he must have mistaken Nancy for the thief, but Nancy doesn't stop. She's like, forget it. And she goes to tackle the woman while the woman is actually like in the process of stealing like this peacock statue. And at that exact moment, the lights come on, and the detective sees the altercation and realizes that Nancy is not the thief and helps Nancy subdue this woman and arrests her. Nancy, the detective, and Mr. Leitner work out that this woman was able to get into the party by pretending to be the relative of one of the invited guests. She actually got like an invitation directly from the hostess, like separately. Like she contacted the hostess pretending that she was a relative of this guest, and that's how she got the invitation. Weird. And then Ned shows up looking trashed. It's like his clothes are all torn and he's been hit over the head. Poor Ned. Another moment of friend endangerment from Nancy. Anyway, so he tells us that the man he was following got away. And the woman who was arrested is not talking. So while we do have one member of the Velvet Gang arrested, we haven't gotten them all. And next Saturday is the last date that was in the hood, but there's no party scheduled for that day. So where will they strike, and how can Nancy stop them? So the next day, Nancy goes with Linda to the police station to see if Linda recognizes the woman that was arrested. And Linda does. She tells the police that this woman visited the Lightner Company before. And she had said that she was planning a party. And she spoke with Mr. Tombar privately about it in Mr. Lightner's office. Not Mr. Tombar's office, Mr. Lightner's office. So, and Linda also noticed that this woman was very interested in Mr. Lightner's mask collection. And of course, we know that Mr. Lightner's masks were stolen very shortly after that. So they were definitely casing the joint to try to steal from the company, right? Yeah. Right. Nancy then decides that she is going to stop by Mr. Tombar's personal address. And she does. And when she gets there, she learns that actually he and his wife have just suddenly moved out in the middle of the night. Oh. They're no longer there. That's suspicious.
That's weird.
Uh-huh. She tries to run several more errands, but like places are closed for like the 4th of July. So later she like goes to get ready for a 4th of July picnic, but first she wants to pick up Bess to go investigate the Blue Iris Inn again. So she goes to get Bess and she's with George at her house. George is still no better. She's still terrified and talks about the case nonstop, but there's nothing they can do about it. So Nancy and Bess just leave. They head to the inn and Nancy notices that there's actually a car parked in front of the inn. So they kind of drive by and they see Mr. Tombar walk out of the car. So Nancy keeps driving on. She doesn't pull into the inn and they park a little bit ahead so that she and Bess can walk back to the house without being noticed by Mr. Tombar.
I love this part. Okay, so they sneak around to like the side of the inn and Nancy peers in through a window and sees that all the crates are now gone. Mr. Tombar is actually going into the basement via a trap door, and then they see him come out holding some velvet hoods in his hand. So clearly he's in league with the Velvet Gang somehow. But just as they see this, they are grabbed from behind and hoods are thrown over their heads. They're tied up, gagged, and then they're thrown into the cellar of the house or of the Blue Iris Inn, and above them, they overhear Mr. Tombar talking with the attorney, the Mr. Harris, who's the real estate attorney or whatever, and they are like making plans to sell this house. Tombar is agreeing to do it, provided he can get cash and close tonight. Like the sale has to be done today, and the attorney's like, okay, sure, just give me like a few hours to get the cash together, and then we'll meet at this time later tonight. So the gang goes to move the girls, but Nancy kind of thinks ahead. She's like, well, if somebody's going to find us, I need to leave a trail, and manages to like pop a button off of her dress and leaves it on the staircase as they're being pulled upstairs. They are taken to a car and then they are brought to some sort of warehouse where they're locked in some dark room. The only thing she's able to glean from this is the identity of one of the members of the gang. It is Mrs. Sneaker. It's Mr. Snecker's wife. And Nancy recognizes her voice from having talked to her earlier, so she's pretty sure that obviously the Sneckers and the Tombars are working together as part of this gang. Meanwhile, Hannah is panicking because Ned has showed up for his date with Nancy, and they both realize that Nancy is nowhere to be found. So they start panicking and realize that Nancy and Bess are missing. They do know that Nancy was headed for the inn, but they have no idea where the inn is actually located because I guess the building is like so old and dilapidated that it's like not listed in a phone number or it's not listed in a phone book or anything. Like it's not an operating business or anything. So they have no way to know where they went.
And it's like an hour outside of town too. So it's not like it's a local place. They just don't know about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ned goes over to the Marvin home where George is and talks to her. And George just like magically snaps out of it, just out of nowhere, I guess, just at hearing that Bess and Nancy are in trouble. This kind of wakes her up a little bit. And she says that the reason she was so scared the reason she's been acting this way for most of the book is because when she was kidnapped, they threatened her that if Nancy were to keep investigating, they would kill not only Nancy, Hannah, and Carson, but also Bess and George and all of their families. So that's enough to startle you a little bit, I would say. But at this point, George is like, it doesn't even matter anymore. Like, they're in danger either way, and staying quiet about it isn't going to help anybody. So she tells them everything she knows, and they are able to George remembers something about Mr. Harris, so they're able to contact Mr. Harris and ask hey, where is that blue iris in? And he gives them the address. He does also tell them that the sale was delayed. He wasn't able to get the cash after all. So because of the 4th of July holiday and everything, the sale is not actually going to go through until next week. So this is pretty good news for their situation. And by this point, the police have been called, and Carson, Ned, George, and Mr. Fane and Mr. Marvin are all going to head to the Blue Iris Inn. They get there and find Nancy's car kind of parked up the road, and they do find the button from her dress on the floor, so they know that they were here, but obviously she and Bess have been moved. So Carson gets the police to set up roadblocks so that no one can get out of town, and the rest of them leave to go search for them, except Ned. Ned decides that he is actually going to stay here just on the off chance that the gang might bring them back, and so he'll be here just in case anybody does come by. So we flash back to Nancy and Bess, who are again trapped in this small room of this warehouse, and they're blindfolded and gagged and tied up so tightly that they basically can't even move. And Bess went unconscious at some point, and so Nancy has to. She manages.
No, I have to say too that Nancy talks about how sometimes when Bess is so frightened, she just passes out.
Yeah.
She mentions that as being a trait of Bess's. She's like, Bess is probably unconscious right now because she's so scared.
I'm really concerned about everyone just not having enough oxygen to their brain throughout the story, because the number of times someone gets hit over the head or loses consciousness for a long period of time is crazy.
Also, it's another demonstration of Nancy not giving a flying F about her friend. She's like, oh, Bess is unconscious again. She's just so terrified. She just passes out. There's nothing we can do. It's Nancy, don't bring your friend into this situation in the first place.
Mm-hmm. She's more concerned about that man she found on the ground at the parking lot at the party than she is about Bess.
Well, to be fair, she was pretty annoyed about that too.
True. Yeah. So they're all tied up, and Nancy she's able to find some sort of metal box in the room, and is able to use a jagged edge or corner of this box to cut her ties on her wrists. And from this, she's able to untie herself and unblindfold herself, and then get over to Bess and untie her as well. So once Bess has regained her consciousness or whatever, they look around the room, and Nancy realizes that this is not just any warehouse. They're in the storeroom at Taylor's department store. And she looks around and she sees a ton of crates. Same crates from the Blue Iris Inn? Yes, they are, because we open them up and we find all of the stolen goods from the heist. Okay, so this is where we get kind of our explanation here. So it seems like the gang has been using tailors to hide their loot and then distribute it to wherever they're going to fence it. So Nancy kind of theorizes all this and explains it to Bess that they would take the stuff to the Blue Iris Inn to package it, and then had Mr. Snecker, who works here, take the boxes through their shipping warehouse, and then the shippers would take the objects to whatever shipping company they were returned to, because they were saying that it was damaged merchandise, and then it would be shipped to this other original distributor company or whatever, and then a fence working there would get the objects and then take them and sell them at a pawn shop or whatever. So it's a little convoluted, but it's actually pretty clever, honestly, how they worked all this out. So wonderful, we found the loot, but we're still trapped in this room. And it also sounds like there are some men on the other side of the door, just on the other side of the door, talking and staying as a lookout, so they're not able to escape. But apparently the gang is planning to steal a ton of Taylor's merchandise tonight. So this must be that final date in the hood that there was no party planned. Well, there is no party because the department store is the big hit or whatever. So they're planning to steal this merchandise, and then they're also going to take Bess and Nancy with them when they flee, which is going to be in like the next 20 minutes here as soon as the guys finish like clearing out all the merchandise or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, so this is actually really clever.
I love this.
Nancy is able to find, because some of the crates actually are legitimately just merchandise. And there's a crate that's filled with like kids' toys, but not just in kids' toys, like science sets. And there's one set that is like a smoke bomb kit. And so Nancy's like, I have an idea. Let's set a pretend fire. So she uses this kit to like make this smoke bomb, and they like set it off right next to the door, and the smoke starts going underneath the door, and the guys outside start freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, there's a fire going on in there. And so they open the door to run in, and that's when Nancy and Bess are able to like trip the guys, or trip the one guy, because I guess everybody else left and it's just one guy left that runs in the room. And so they are able to trip him. Do you want to take the last chapter here?
Sure. So Nancy are able to, trip this guy, and they like get on top of him and they tie him up. It also turns out that this guy is Mr. Snecker. We like had never met him before. We finally do meet him when we tie him up. And so Nancy then decides that instead of trying to like get away, she wants to try to stop this department store theft from happening. So she does find a phone and she calls the police, because I guess otherwise she literally thinks about like going into the department store to try to like attack the guys who are stealing. But there's like 3 of them and only 2. There's only Nancy and Bess. So it's like, okay, well, I guess those aren't good odds. And so she calls the police. Oh my God, Nancy. So they wait until the police arrive, which is just a few minutes later. Nancy and Bess end up blocking the back door, and they do actually get into a physical altercation with a couple members of the gang, but the police come in at that point and manage to arrest them all. Everybody's questioned at the store, and with the help of Nancy, all of the members of the gang confess to their involvement, and they rat out other members of the gang, including the ringleader, who is Mr. Peter Tombar. No surprise.
Of course.
Apparently he's the one who like figured out all of this whole setup and planned all of the heists. He's not here, though. He has, like, gotten away. He was never here when this theft was occurring. So I guess we have to try to catch him somehow still. George arrives here along with everybody who is looking for Nancy and Bess, and they all have a happy reunion. And now that Nancy is safe and most of the gang has been caught, George seems to be somewhat back to normal now, which is good. But then we remember that Ned is still back at the inn. And of course, we know that Mr. Tombar is still on the loose. So Nancy is like a little bit worried about this. So she, George, Bess, and the police and everyone all rush over back to the inn. And they find Ned basically just like sitting on top of Mr. Tombar at the inn. Apparently, Mr. Tombar did return to the inn to try to like find, I guess, some money that he had hidden there before fleeing. And Ned was able to like tackle him and held him down until they managed to arrive. So now Tombar is arrested, and over the course of the next few days, all of the remaining members of the gang are rounded up, including those who are in like the other towns where their goods were shipped to. Stolen property is returned to their original owners, and Carson tells a very happy Mr. Leitner that all of the lawsuits have been settled out of court. So his business is no longer in danger. Mr. Leitner is so happy and grateful to Nancy that he gives her one of his masks as a reward. It's like this ancient Egyptian mask that is like of like a beautiful queen or something. I don't know. And Nancy says she's going to wear it to a fraternity masquerade party that Ned is invited to next week.
Great.
Taking an ancient Egyptian mask to a frat party.
They make it seem like this is like an authentic one as well.
Well, okay, I will give it the fact that Mr. Leitner actually gives her 2 masks. He gives her that actual real ancient Egyptian mask, and he gives her a replica mask.
But still.
And so she's going to wear the replica. But it's like...
to still even own the authentic original.
I know.
What?
Nancy, and this is cute. Nancy asks Bess and George what they're gonna go to this costume party as, and Bess says she's gonna go as Bo Peep as usual, which
Cute.
is like, oh my god, so cute. Of course, Bess goes to the party dressed as Bo Peep.
Of course.
And then George says she doesn't know who she's gonna go as, but she does know the one person that she is not going as is Nancy, because she already did that and found it to be too dangerous. Thank you, George.
That's funny. That's a good ending.
And yeah, that's the end. So,
Aw.
oh my god,
Loved it.
I
What a
did
classic heist. Yeah.
too. Classic.
Mm-hmm.
I do have to say, I think the police in this book really annoyed me in
Yeah.
retrospect.
Yeah.
Specifically the cop at the station, where George was kidnapped from.
Oh, yeah.
Like, please tell me why you would have a cop posted at a train station if you are not actually gonna let that cop try to react to any crime
Mm-hmm.
that is happening there. He can't drive down a road because it's not in his jurisdiction. Is that real life? Because I feel like in this kind of situation, if you're an active on-duty cop, you see a crime being committed, that it's kind of your duty to chase after that person,
Yeah.
right?
You
Like,
would think. I would hope.
even if you end up chasing him into a place that's not your jurisdiction, like, you've seen a crime being committed. Well, even if you were a citizen, right? You can do like a citizen's arrest on
Right.
someone if you saw them kidnap someone.
Mm-hmm.
So that really peeved me up. I mean, talk about cops being useless. Like,
Yeah.
George got fully kidnapped and taken because this guy was like, "Oh, I can't do anything about it."
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. That
Unbelievable.
whole scene was just aggravating. Maybe that's the right word. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would have thrown a suitcase at somebody if they tried to drag her
Seriously.
off, screaming, "Don't let them off the train!" Like,
Oh, people would have been catching elbows.
Mhm.
My fingernails would have been in people's eyes.
yeah,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be this. Please move aside. I need to get through. No,
Sir. There'd be no
screaming.
sirs.
Yeah,
There would be. This is going to be too graphic. I can't say that. Never mind.
there would be violence, and it would be
Yes.
justified. Sorry, but like,
Yeah.
that whole scene was so scary.
Overall, though, I loved it.
It was great.
It
Honestly,
was really good.
plot hole wise, I feel like the story was really solid. Like everything is explained.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like there was anything that was left unexplained or confusing or anything like that.
Yeah. The only thing I think that peeved me plot wise is just kind of how we didn't resolve it sooner.
Yeah.
And like, they're writing a story, so I can understand you're trying to a certain extent, you're trying to delay it, right? To tell the story that you want to tell. But yeah, it's so obvious that it's Mr. Tombar. From
Yeah.
the very beginning, he's a mean guy. He gets on to Linda. He literally points the police at Linda.
Mm-hmm.
We already know it's an inside job. We know that from the very beginning. The police think that from the very beginning.
Right.
So it's like we don't even really need the ink from the inside of the hood to confirm that it's an inside job. We know it's an inside job. And who exactly do we think is the person responsible? Obviously, it's the guy pointing fingers at other people. Obviously, it's the guy who's like being really weird and doing weird stuff on his lunch breaks.
Right.
And like, showing up for parties that he wasn't supposed to show up for where thefts occur. Like,
Right.
clearly it's him. I don't...
I feel like we could have done a better job of investigating specific employees. Like once you know it's an inside job, just start like interrogating all of them, interview everyone just to narrow it down and see where you get.
Mm-hmm.
And also we could have just like set a trap. Like if we know that the MO is to show up to these parties where valuables are going to be on display and they're going to be wearing a disguise and then they're going to throw the lights and then that's when they're going to steal. Just like have a bunch of police hiding in the room where the valuables are. And then as soon as the lights go on, like barricade all the doors so they can't get out. And then you've trapped them. Like, you know what they're going to be doing. Like you have plenty of opportunity to catch them in the act. And we don't attempt to do that.
Yeah.
So that bothered me that we don't try to catch them in the act.
Yeah.
But sorry, anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just crazy to me that like we don't know who it is off the bat. When it's so obvious. It's so obvious. Yeah. And Mr. Leitner, I'm sorry, but what a horrible boss, essentially.
Yeah.
Like when Nancy's like, you won't be responsible for hiring Linda back because that's not your job. You've given that responsibility to Mr. Tombar. Okay, but like we know, like that like thefts have been happening, my guy. And so it's like when we tell you that like, oh, Mr. Tombar is kind of suspicious and like you really need to not tell him about the stuff going on. It's just crazy to me that he's not taking a closer look at everything going on in his company and just blindly trusting this guy that he even says he doesn't really know that much about. He says that he just only hired him like a few weeks ago or something. Like he has
4
not
years.
been. Oh, was it 4 years?
Yeah, he says he's been working there for 4. When he fires him, he's like, I've been here 4 years. You can't fire me. And he's like, yes, I can.
I sworn he said something about like it not being that long, or maybe he hasn't been in that role very long.
I think Linda was hired very recently.
Well, I don't. Maybe I'm misremembering. But anyway, still, like blindly trusting this guy. Like,
once you have lawsuits coming to your company, you need to take better control of what's going on. You can't just be like, it's out of my hands because I assigned it to somebody else. No, you need to be protecting your own assets, sir. Like seriously.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Especially because it's like it's thefts that are happening. So like it seems to be pretty clear that like you could figure out who of your employees were stealing. You know what I mean? If you tried, you could probably figure it out. But he just kind of like leaves it to this teenage girl, which is like fine. I mean, like I get you hired her dad to do this or whatever, but like, don't you want to know? Don't you want to try to figure it out too? Like,
you would think.
I don't know.
Yeah, take a look at your like time clock-in system and figure out who was working on the days of the thefts and narrow it down from there. Like, yeah.
Do in-depth interviews, like you were saying. Interview all of your employees. Try to figure out who's acting weird. Learn about Mr. Tombar's 2-hour lunch breaks, which he didn't even know about. Didn't know were happening. Learn that everyone hates Mr. Tombar. That he's a really bad boss. Think, well, maybe even if he's not responsible for the thefts, nobody likes him. Maybe I should just get somebody else to do his job so that all of my employees are happier. And then we can at least cross him off the list.
Yeah. You would think. This book is so funny, though. There were so many comedic moments.
That's so true. I was thinking, especially while we were talking, that like this, I could definitely see this as being like a Bonita Granville movie.
Yes.
There were like so many moments where I was like, I can see Bonita Granville and who's the kid?
Oh, Frankie Thomas.
Frankie Thomas. I can see them both doing this scene. Like whenever Nancy like is acting as like the coat check girl, I can see them dressing up as a coat check girl and a coat check guy, and like they have to split up, and Ned is like grumpy about it, or Ted is grumpy about it, and Nancy does a quick change and then runs to go get Ted, and Ted doesn't want to follow the guy, but he has to follow the guy, and or the moment where oh gosh, where is it? There was another moment that I thought of that I think it was like Nancy like catch. Oh, the coat being bundled up in the comforter and throwing the coats on top of her. Bonita Granville would do so well in that scene, trying to like untangle herself from all of this stuff. It's so clear to me in my brain.
Or, oh my gosh, possibly my favorite, funniest line in the whole book when when Bess and Nancy are missing and everyone is freaking out. The whole town is like running around looking for them, trying to see where's the last place we could be. The police are on the lookout. Just imagine you're Chief McGinnis and you're looking for this missing girl, and all of a sudden you get a phone call from her and you're like, Nancy, where have you been? And she's just like, I've basically solved it for you. Get down here. Where have you been?
Yes.
It's just so funny. Let me see if I can find the exact line.
Oh, I found it. In the original text version, quietly retreating, the girls located a telephone booth in the rear. Nancy called headquarters. She had hardly spoken her name when Chief Denny said, "Where are you? There's a 3-state alarm out for you." "In Taylor's, there's a robbery going on. Come quick. I'll meet you at the employees' entrance in the alley."
I love it. Just imagine. It's Nancy. She called me. It's great. Thank you, Mildred. You're hilarious.
That's really funny. I will say, too, that I definitely think there's evidence in this book of Bess being psychic.
Yes.
We get that. So right after Nancy kind of foils the robbery at that one party, I don't remember which one, and she comes back to her house and she tells Bess and George about it. This is before George gets kidnapped or anything. And Bess is like, oh, Nancy, now they're going to be after you because you spoiled their, their thing. Then Nancy immediately gets the threatening phone call.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Like, you better give us the hood back or whatever. And then also at the very end of the book, Bess says something. So Nancy ought to go as the Queen of Mystery. She's talking about the mask that she got from Mr. Leitner. It won't be long before she'll be in the midst of another puzzle. Bess's prophecy came true when Nancy was confronted with one of the most puzzling problems of her sleuthing career in The Ringmaster Secret, which is the next book.
I love it.
But it literally says Bess's prophecy. I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, I would love to go back and track like these best psychic moments because I'm wondering if this was a Mildred Ward Benson thing.
I love it.
So we should see, or if anyone wants to do this, go back and see if there are more like best psychic moments in the books that Mildred Ward Benson wrote. Because just that line about like her prophecy, I'm like, this seems a little too heavy-handed from the author. You know what I mean? I wonder if it was like a thing. It was like something that Millie B was trying to put in there.
Little mystical best moments. Love it.
But no, it was really good. It was really good. Yeah. And all of like the annoyances that I had outside of the cop situation is really just like annoyances of like the things that are like actually happening in the books, things that are supposed to annoy me, as a reader, not like things that I'm annoyed about as having been written about, Yeah. Outside, of course, all the cultural appropriation, but
that was rough. Yeah.
Of course.
That was definitely still in the revised. We just don't use the same language. Like we don't use the word savages to describe people who wear masks and, so. I did see your note about Carson helping Ned into his costume.
Yes!
And I do feel like the Ned Carson homoerotic stuff is also a good, like, Millie Benson trademark moment.
Okay, you guys, I have to read this to you because this is the most, it's so, you could read all the double entendre into this that, like, you want. So Nancy's showing him his costume. Isn't it handsome, Ned? A plumed hat and high-heeled boots, a white neck ruff, too, and lace cuffs. Ned gave an indignant snort. You expect me to wear that? You'll make such a distinguished-looking Spanish grandee, Nancy coaxed. Please, Ned. He says, okay, those trousers look skimpy, though, he says. I'll help pour you into them, Mr. Drew offered. The two retired to an upstairs bedroom. During the next 10 minutes, weird sounds filtered down to Nancy and Mrs. Gruen. They were certain that the costume would be ripped to shreds before Ned's muscular body could be encased in it. Excuse me? What are you two doing up there?
Why does Ned need help putting his pants on? Why does Ned need his girlfriend's father to help him put his pants on?
Why are there weird sounds that you can hear from all the way downstairs? So they're not just doing it upstairs in that bedroom. They're doing it loudly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
The sound, weird sounds. Hold
sounds.
on. Let me read it one more time. What does it say? Weird sounds. It says weird sounds. The two retired to an upstairs bedroom. Weird sounds filtered down. They were sure that the costume was going to be ripped in half. I can't. No,
oh my gosh.
No, because that's so crazy.
I'm trying to see the revised text. I'm pretty sure they cut that. Let me see.
I can see why one would.
They did cut it, and you should see the art that they did for Ned in this costume.
Oh my god.
But it's just, you'll make such a distinguished looking escort. Please put it on, Ned. All right. He went into the guest room and 10 minutes later appeared on the stairway landing. How do I look? He asked. And then here's the picture. He's like, I don't need to see this.
That thing is too big in those pants. I don't need glasses.
The boots. And then Nancy in her outfit, you can see the full.
Is that a mustache on, or is he just making a goofy looking face?
No, I think it's just a grin. Yeah, no, it's just a grin. Oh my gosh.
I'll never get over. Carson says, I'll pour you into those pants.
Oh my gosh.
Pour what? Carson, pour what?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was funny.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end this.
Yeah, I think that's all I've got for this one.
Yeah. Okay. Flashlight score, Kori?
Oh, okay. I want to score original and revised a little bit differently, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Revised, I'm going to give it a 4.
Wow.
I think original, I'm going to give it a 5. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was really fun.
Okay. I do think, obviously I can't score the revised text because I didn't read it. I do think the original text felt like it dragged on a little bit for me.
Okay.
And I do feel like it's just like party after party after party after party. Got a little boring to me. And I wish there was just a little bit more diversity in what Nancy was doing and how Nancy was investigating, getting a little bit different settings. I was just tired of rich people party. Yeah. Rich people party.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I did still really enjoy it. So I would give it like a 4.5, because really that's like my only critique of it. You know, otherwise I think it's really good. So yeah.
Oh, what a fun one.
I know.
And for Mildred's last, it's like she went out on a very high note. You know, this is the very last Nancy Drew book she ever wrote. Far from her last book, to be clear, but last Nancy Drew book. Yeah.
Yeah. So good.
Yes.
Wow. Next up, Regular Drews, we will be covering another mystery story. We are going to try to do the original text and the revised text again for this one too. And thank you to our patrons who voted on this one for us. We will cover next The Quest of the Missing Map. Yay! So that one's number 19. So that's actually before this one in time. Who did that one? I'm going to look. Quest of the Missing Map is another Mildred Wirt Benson one, and revised by Priscilla Baker Carr.
Oh, perfect.
So, yeah.
Excellent.
1942, though. So a full, 10 years earlier is going to be The Quest of the Missing Map. I do think, if I'm remembering the cover of this one, though, this is one of my favorite covers.
Oh, yes, the pink one.
Because it's pink! Yes. It's pink, you guys, and it features our trio in such a lovely way. Or at least the Rudy Nappy cover that I have here. So, yeah, I'm very, very excited for that.
Oh, that reminds me. One other thing that I just really liked about this one, just the amount of Drew Crew ness in it. Like, we have Carson and Hannah and Ned and Bess and George. We get everybody, and they all play a pretty good role. It's not just like a one phone call and then Carson's gone for the rest of the story or anything like that. So
that's
I really appreciated that part of it.
And it feels really balanced. It's not like, they're not just in it for a minute. Ned gets a significant part. Bess gets a significant part. Obviously, George does too. Yeah. Hannah is maybe the only one who not so much, but she's still pretty present.
She has to go do the wig thing.
Yeah, she's involved. So
also, what's with the wig theme lately?
Yeah, that's weird.
Sorry, not to pull us back into Velvet Mask too much, but
no, that's definitely weird because of the Hardy Boys book. And this one. Yeah,
I'm gonna laugh so hard if we have a wig plotline in Quest of the Missing Map with disguises. I love it.
That's so funny. Yeah, I guess we will see next time, Regular Drews, and we'll see you then too.
Yeah, join us then.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there,
Thanks for listening.